Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Glad that you're with us, watching on YouTube or listening to us on iTunes or Google Play or the Facebook page. He is one of the greats of all time. He is the lead analyst for NBC, one of the best in the business, and a friend of mine, Jerry Bailey, the Hall of Fame jockey, joins us from his home in Florida. Hello, Jerry.
Hey, Kenny. Nice to be with you.
Hey, thank you for being with us. You got your golf game in and all is good today.
Yeah, I didn't play very well, but it's a beautiful day, and I enjoy being out there.
See, we have to qualify what a Jerry Bailey day of golf would be compared to the regular people, because you're a very good golfer, you know.
It depends on the day, Kenny. Depends on the day.
See, I say most people would be happy if they knew what you shot. Say, Jerry shot that? Gosh, I wish I could shoot that. That's what they'd say. There's a race coming up in Louisville, I've noticed, on the first Saturday in May that draws a lot of attention, and you've been on the scene. You were covering the Louisiana Derby for NBC over the weekend. More races coming up ahead. This seems like a really kind of wide-open place at the time, although we know Baffert's got two big horses in Game Winner and Improbable, Jerry.
Yeah, it's just like every year. I think the conversation begins with Bob Baffert and what he's got. Coming into this year, I thought that he had the clear two best horses in last year's two-year-old champ Game Winner and the undefeated Improbable. I still think those two might be the best, but I think the separation is a lot less. Just because their schedule kind of got messed up a little bit with all the bad weather and the cancellations in Santa Anita. They didn't even run the San Felipe. So Baffert had to shift gears and go to Arkansas with his California horses. And they both ran great races. Both of them just narrowly beaten in two divisions of the Rebel. Improbable, I'm going to say, definitely was the best horse. He was very wide on both turns, yet beat less than a neck. Game Winner was a little wider than the winner in his race and just got beat a nose. So I would expect them to come back and run really well, if not both win. So they lost a little luster, but not much.
And this is a field, I talk about this time of the year as kind of like the March Madness for horse racing. To me, we're getting down now to that part of the schedule, like moving on in the brackets, like getting close to the Elite Eight, trying to figure out who the best is with the big races coming up right now, including the Santa Anita Derby you mentioned, and the Wood, and the Arkansas, the Bluegrass. Probably missed somebody in there. The UAE Derby, maybe even perhaps, might have a horse coming over.
Yeah, as we go through the spring and get closer to the Derby, Kenny, we usually get some kind of clarity. Now, I would say that, I don't think much changed after the Rebel. Both those horses at Baffert look like the best. They still look like they might be the best. You got to give a lot of credit to Mandela's horse, and of course that horse Long Range Toddy. He ran a really good race in the Southwest. Was in a lot of trouble, so to come back and win wasn't a huge surprise. But I think those horses will come back again and be very formful. The Sunland Park Derby, which is run Sunday, I don't know if those horses can take another giant step up. Another Twist of Fate did answer a question for me. Mm-hmm. Can he dirt? And he certainly ran well. Probably with a little cleaner trip would have won. I can't kill the jock on the right. He was saving ground, but he just had to kind of get shuffled back a little bit on that far turn and then come again and just narrowly beaten as he was closing back in on Pletcher's horse, who won it, Cutting Humor. But the Louisiana Derby was just a total anomaly for me. Yeah. I mean, that whole day was upside down. Serengeti Empress had things her own way in the Oaks, and she bled, I guess is what the report was, but finished last. And the winner of the Louisiana Derby was a kind of surprise. Just had broken his maiden, by my standards is his name.
Calhoun's horse, Brett Calhoun.
Yeah, you could see Todd's horse, the second place horse spinoff, brilliant win at Tampa by many lengths, with a lot left. So for him to come back and run that well wasn't a huge surprise. But the winner was a surprise. Now, we'll talk about the favorite, War of Will. He had a little problem about the third or fourth, maybe the fifth jump out of the gate. His back end slid out from underneath him. He dropped down. I guess he strained himself a little bit. If he comes back, he could be, a threat, but we won't see him run again. He's not going to run again before the Kentucky Derby. So you still have a question mark there. So we still got some to learn, Kenny.
Well, one thing we learned during the career of Jerry Bailey is when it's money time, there was none better. I remember the two Derby wins, Sea Hero in 93 When I think you had one of the great lines, kind of like about the sea almost parting. I'm in
Yeah.
that ballpark, something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, when you come as far back in the pack as those two horses did, you
And
have to have
Grindstone, yeah.
everything go right. And, it doesn't happen often, but thank God it split at the correct times for me. And I was lucky enough to hit those holes running and had the horse that was good enough to accelerate through them. So, yeah, I got lucky in those two.
Well, sometimes you create your own luck, don't you? You, you,
I always just had a philosophy, Kenny. I'd put my horse in a spot that if he was good enough, he could win.
Mhm.
You don't have to be Superman a lot of time on these horses. If you can just give them a chance and let them show what they got.
Seven-time Eclipse Award winner as a jockey. That is still a record. 15 Breeders' Cup wins, a record 5 Breeders' Cup Classics, including Cigar, who I guess may be the most identified horse with you. I don't know if that's fair to say. You've ridden some great ones. You had big victories. But, Cigar and Jerry Bailey kind of are still synonymous. Looking back on that 16-race win streak in the Dubai World Cup, its first year, that was such a special time.
Yeah, he was my favorite, Kenny. He was the best horse I ever rode. He was my favorite horse. He was just, look, I was blessed to be the guy they picked to ride him. And that's all I can tell you, because a lot of guys could have been on and won most, if not all, of those races. So I was the right place at the right time. And of course, Biltmont did such a good job keeping him at a high level for so long. And it was cool. I mean, you don't see horses with anywhere close to that kind of winning streak anymore, because they don't run as often. So yeah, that was fun for me. It was a cool thing in history.
What was special about Cigar? I mean, we obviously can look at the numbers and see what he did, but I mean, again, of the great horses you've ridden, what really stood out about him from the obvious? He kept going to the winner's circle for you.
Well, he's what I think a lot of the character. He had the characteristics a lot of great horses have. Tremendous amount of speed that you could harness. So he had rateable speed. He was a brilliant miler that allowed the guy on his back to settle him to the extent he would get a mile and an eighth and even a mile and a quarter. So anytime you have a horse with brilliant speed and he allows you to rate and harness that speed to a certain degree, they become almost unbeatable.
The best advice a trainer gave you was probably Andre Fabre before the 93 Breeders' Cup Classic, when you pulled the biggest upset still in Breeders' Cup history, winning aboard a 100-1 Chardar Kong.
He told me, "Good luck, Kenny." That's what he told me, and that's all I knew about this horse. He was from France, and of course there was very little video on foreign horses at the time. And the taglines in the racing forum, it didn't tell you exactly where they were at the given poles, like in American racing, or what the fractions were. So you just had a sort of an idea, that he came from back in the pack. But that's it. That's kind of how I rode him. I just, took him to the rail and sent him back in the pack, and he started picking horses up one after another. And he was clearly the best horse in the race. I mean, I did get a very good trip, but it was as much a shock to me as it was anybody.
And that's what I like most about that, is afterwards, talking to you afterwards and people then learning the story, because Fabre wasn't speaking English. I don't know how fluent you are in French, but yeah, that was basically it. Good luck.
Yeah, look, and I couldn't even pronounce his name. It's Arcangues, and if you can get Arcang from that, then you're better than I am. And I didn't know his name was Arcong, but I knew he ran like King Kong. So, my hat's off to that horse and that training job by a brilliant guy.
How much does a jockey rely on what a trainer is going to say? Now, obviously, relationships you've had with some of the trainers, like a Bill Mott or something over the years, I guess you kind of almost like shorthand before you go and riders up is called. But when you're riding somebody in a big race and you know a little bit about him, I know you study the form so you understand how the race is going to break down. But do you get a whole lot of information from a trainer just before a big race?
So that's a really good question, Kenny. And I've got a perfect anecdotal story for you. I want to know the things that I cannot determine from watching a video or looking at the racing form, such as, does the horse get intimidated when he's in tight quarters? Does he like the outside better than the inside? Does he, run better if you, whip him, if you don't whip him? And most importantly, how quick is his acceleration through the race? All right. So, like, if you're going along and there's a hole there, 2 horse lengths in front of you, how long is it going to take you to get to that hole? Is it going to take you 3 strides? Is he instantaneous? Or is he kind of a grinder that, it takes a while for him to wind up and get back in full stride, from, a mid-race speed. So I was in Saratoga, and races are very important in Saratoga. Every win counts because most jockeys want to be leading rider at Saratoga. So there's a premium on wins there. And I was in the paddock, and I was riding for Dick Dutrow, and he wasn't in the paddock at the time. His assistant was. And I said, look, I've read the form. I looked at the video. It looks like this horse comes from 6 or 7 off the pace. He makes one good late run starting, somewhere before you turn for home. The guy said, that's it. That's exactly how he likes to run. So that's how I was going to ride him. So we break, and I'm exactly, where I'm supposed to be, 5, 6, 7 lengths off the lead. We go to the far turn. I'm starting to creep up a little bit, and we turn for home, and I ask him for his best. And this horse accelerated like a rocket. And he made up 5 lengths by the 8th pole, and I'm already, drawing away a length in front. And as soon as I hit the 16th pole, he put his ears up, he stopped running, and I knew I had made the lead too soon. There was a characteristic about this horse that he idled when he made the lead, and nobody told me. And sure enough, the horse I had just passed came back and beat me by about a nose.
Wow.
So I wasn't a good loser, Kenny. I'll tell you right now. I was livid pulling up, and I'm thinking, God, all the guy had to tell me is don't make the lead too soon.
Yeah.
He pulls up. He idles when he makes the lead. So I came back, and I got off the horse, and I looked at him in a very sarcastic tone. I said, did anybody that has ridden this horse before tell you that he idles when he makes the lead? The guy said, oh, I forgot to mention that. And I said, those are the kind of things that I really need to know when I'm ridden a horse for the first time. So, yes, there are some things that I really need to know that I can't determine from video or a racing form, and the trainer needs to tell me.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, because it's not like you get a whole lot of shots. I'm talking about trainers and jockeys, like you say, at a special meet like Saratoga in a big race. You'd think you'd want to tell you everything you possibly could.
Yeah. So, yes, that was a good question by you, Kenny Rice.
Well, thank you. Every now and then I have one. Not many, but, I try to save it for the big guests.
There you go.
Well, I'm going to throw this at you, too. You've given information. Ken Ramsey was on our show a few weeks ago and was giving your praise about your advice to him with Kitten's Joy way back when, and that's when he decided that he was going to make the switch. He was, dirt, and actually he wanted to try to have a Derby horse or grass, and he's going back and forth. And he said if it hadn't been for Jerry Bailey, Kitten's Joy would not have had the track success that he had. That's a Ken Ramsey quote.
Yeah, I had I was riding him, and I'd gone over, and Ken said, you know what, he's a 3-year-old, so, it was in the spring, it was your Gulfstream, and he said, would you mind coming over and working him on the dirt and tell me if you think he has any future on the dirt? I said, yeah, sure, might as well. And so I went over, and he was spinning his wheels in the workout, and I told him, I said, Kenny, you're wasting your time if you can try this horse on the dirt. He's a special horse on the grass, but I think you'll be sorry if you run him on the dirt. And so he took it at face value, and what a super turf horse that horse was. I mean, he was great.
Yeah. How many times does that happen with a trainer or an owner that comes to you and says, Jerry, I really need to know. I mean, if this is just a horse, let me know. If there's some potential there, let me know. Does that happen often with you?
Yeah, not that much, really, Kenny. I mean, most trainers are pretty savvy, and they know. I just think that they wanted. I think they knew. I think they just wanted one more confirmation, that they needed to stay where they were, and that being on the grass. But most trainers really have a pretty good idea.
I don't think there's any more athlete that is dedicated to the craft than a jockey. I really don't, in covering several sports over the years. Hall of Famer Jerry Bailey, our guest right here on the Racing Show, is certainly in that group. So dedicated that I believe you told me one time that you had a banana every day for your lunch.
That was it. Here was my daily routine, Kenny. I'd have a half a cup of coffee in the morning and a muffin, like an English muffin, maybe a bran muffin or corn muffin. Half a cup of coffee, not a whole one, because liquid was heavier than solid. So if you drank, the poundage, short term would be heavier. Lunch would be a piece of fruit, usually a banana, and then a very, very controlled dinner. And so basically, Kenny, I'm 5'5". I might have been 5'6" riding, so I was tall for a jockey. Yeah. I was basically hungry for 31 years of my career. Always a little hungry for 31 years. So I told you before, I wasn't a good loser. I was cranky. And I found out since now that I can eat, I'm in a lot better mood when I can have a full stomach. So, if you see those riders out there and they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, especially the guys that reduce hard, throw them a break.
I, I try. Isn't that I'm gonna tell you, that's the worst thing. And I've had to do it with you in your riding days where you say, hey, Kenny, it just got beat. Talk to that runner up that just lost by a nose. That's always I'm always that fun guy that approached you, or now several other guys, and say, yeah, what happened? What else can you say at that stage?
Yeah, it's kind of tough for us, for a jockey. I say us, I'm retired now 13 years, but usually other athletes it's at the end of the game, it's after the event, and they've had some time to assimilate their thoughts and cool down a little bit. For riders, like the race is over, and within 5 minutes, of getting off the horse, somebody's wanting to interview, and we understand that. A lot of times, we're not totally collected, and it's usually when we make a mistake. At least for me, it was usually when I made the mistake and I was mad at myself that my temper was the shortest.
You were nice to me.
Because you're a nice person, Ken.
No, but that is tough. And, that's another thing that people don't realize is because you prepare for the entire day. When you're riding 6 horses a day or whatever you were riding at that time, at the peak, you basically have almost 6 or 7 different jobs in that one day.
Yeah, I spent, some guys don't spend that much time. A lot of guys do, preparing, reading the racing form and going over video. And you're right, you don't have much time between races, so you do the lion's share of it before the first race that you ride even starts. And then you might just, glance at it as a refresher. But yeah, you've got to, I was always at least thinking, okay, which one was this that I studied? Look, in the middle of the race, that happens sometimes. I knew the 7 horse usually gets out when he turns for home. Is that this race, or was that 2 races from now?
Yeah.
And because there's so much information that you have to absorb before the day even starts, sometimes it gets confusing. Yeah.
What's the funniest thing somebody said? What's the banter between jockeys sometimes during the actual race? Because you guys are so close together at times, even brushing at times.
Yeah, there's the typical expletive deleted out there when somebody cuts you tight and, kind of shuts you off or shaves you a little bit. But I think the funniest, and I won't mention any names, but there was a certain jockey that had the perfect trip. And it was in the pocket and waiting, just, saving ground. And all they had to do is wait till the hole opened. And this particular jockey was almost trying to shut somebody off, push somebody out just to get out of that perfect spot. And I looked over at the rider next to me and I said, look at this. This jock up there, I'd give $1,000 to be right where that rider is right now. And they're trying to shut somebody off to get out of that spot. And
yeah.
The guy next to me just started laughing, because he was probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talk back and forth. A lot of times what we talk is when the race is pretty much over and we're just way back in the pack and have no chance to finish in the money. But it goes on.
Jerry Bailey, not only a Hall of Fame rider, but a person as well who took a stand. It was a big stand back in 2003 when you wanted to wear Wranglers, a patch on the side of your pants. I mean, you were kind of really a breakthrough guy for all of the jockeys because it's commonplace now to see this.
Yeah, I think that, look, there was guys that in the 1940s that took a stand for us riders to get paid our 10% to the office.
Mm-hmm.
So at critical moments during any period that leaders and guys in the forefront will take stands to make their profession better. I just happened to be the guy that was offered to wear something in the Belmont Stakes in 2003. I took the option. I was fought a lot about it. We actually ended up going to court in Louisville over sponsorship down there, and we won. So yeah, it was a bit of a breakthrough. It was new then, and I'm glad I did it. Now the guys can wear them and make a little bit more money for themselves.
And Empire Maker was a pretty good day for you, too, at the Belmont that year.
It was great. He was a great horse. I mean, that was my Triple Crown horse. That's the one thing I wanted to do that I never accomplished, was win the Triple Crown. And he was the horse to do it. He just hurt his hoof on Tuesday of Derby week, and of course he finished second. And then he skipped the Preakness and then won the Belmont. But I just thought he was the best 3. All due respect to the other 3-year-olds that year, Funny Side, who finished in front of him in the Derby. I just thought he was the one, and just a little unlucky. That's how hard it is to win these races, these Triple Crown races, Kenny.
Yeah.
You not only have to have the best horse, you have to be on the best horse that day. Everything has to go right for these horses. So
Yeah,
that's why it's tough.
Yeah, Jerry's won it twice, won the Kentucky Derby twice, of course, Sea Hero and Grindstone. And I think that maybe what makes the Derby, to me, as special as any sporting event out there is because it is the ultimate one and done. You got one shot with that horse at the Derby. And
yeah,
like
you're
you
not
say,
coming back next year.
yeah, Empire Maker wasn't coming back as a 4-year-old and trying it again. You know, you just don't get that.
Right.
And, I don't know. Does that put any extra pressure? Was a Derby a pressure race for you or in more than any other big race, or did you just approach it as here's another big race?
No. Actually, there's not a lot of pressure at all, Kenny, because nobody expects you to win. The race is so hard to win that, unless you're, 3 to 5, which is not often in that race.
Right.
You're not expected to win. 20 guys go out there, and you're going to have 19 losers. So everybody knows how hard it is to win. So for me, it wasn't a pressure-packed race. It was difficult, but it wasn't pressure-packed for me.
Is it pressure-packed now that you're getting ready for the NBC show yet once again, and you're going to be studying you and Randy Moss must study nonstop, by the way, for the next 5 weeks.
This guy is, you called me the ultimate professional. Randy Moss.
Oh, he is
the most prepared and very good at what he does, but the most over-prepared person I've ever seen in my life. He's got stacks. You've seen this, Kenny.
Oh, yeah.
We're in the trailer.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what. Last Saturday's a prime example of how much Randy Moss prepares. Somebody walked through there, and we're talking. It was Randy said, I'm going to call Brett Calhoun. You want to talk to him? I said, yeah. And the horse is, he was 25 to 1. He probably should have been 50 to 1. He just broke his maiden is all he'd ever done.
Yeah.
And so Randy called him, and we talked to him, and we got the skinny on what he thought about the horse, that the horse had broken his maiden. But then it was after that he worked out so well. The light came on, so to speak, for the horse, and he was really on fire, and he liked his chances. One guy came back and said, what are you talking about that horse for? He's got no chance. And Randy looked up. He said, you never know. And
Yeah.
90% of the stuff he won't use that he prepares and the work that he does, he won't use. Only 10%. But you never know what 10%.
Yeah.
And so that's his philosophy. And I learned when I came in the game, I started partnering with Randy Moss in 2006, and we've worked together every year since. And there's no better person to teach somebody that business, the art of handicapping and analyzing races for television, and I'm just so blessed to have come up with him.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with you guys and to listen to you guys as I do throughout the course of the day. And, sometimes I'll hear something, and that'll help me later on for an interview, something that you guys said during the course of the show, even over the course of a 4-hour and a half, 5-hour show like the Derby.
Yeah, it's those kind of shows fly though, Kenny. Those
do.
Long shows.
Yeah.
Once you get in the rhythm of doing these races, and look, even the Breeders' Cup, which is 5 or 6 hours Friday and 6 or 7 hours on Saturday. Once you get in the flow of that and you get used to doing it, it flies. I love it. It's fun. It's really fun.
Well, Jerry, a pleasure always, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks in Louisville, my friend.
Okay, Kenny, thank you. And I love working with you too, by the way. You just don't happen to sit right next to me, so that's a clarification there.
Well, no, you didn't have to say that, but that was very kind of you. Yeah, you don't want to be over in the barn area. You don't want to be in the barn area, especially last year when it rained all day. I spent a lot of time, more than I ever have in Shed Row, just to get out of the rain, by the way. There was no respite anywhere.
I retired my rain gear and my goggles when I stopped riding and started analyzing races. So, yeah, you got that one, buddy.
All right, Jerry, thanks again, pal.
Bye-bye.
Hall of Famer Jerry Bailey joining us here. More on The Racing Show when we come back.